Is it possible that, in fact, the Republicans have been right all along and that we shouldn't have done the $3.3 trillion last spring, and it was right to wait because $908 billion may be enough?
I think the $3.3 trillion was always a negotiating position. We certainly should have done stimulus in the summer. We would have come into this difficult period with a stronger economy. We would have had even more rapid growth. We would have helped a lot of children who are going hungry. We would have prevented a lot of layoffs from state and local governments. But look, David, what's important now is to look forward, not backward. And you saw it in today's employment figures. You see it in what's happening with COVID. This economy needs relief, and it needs it now. It needs it for hungry children. It needs it for people who are unemployed. It needs it to compensate those who are going to need to stay home if we're all going to stay safe. It needs it to pay for much more testing than we're having. It needs it to pay for more contact tracing than we're now doing. It needs it to pay for the monitoring and assuring that people are wearing masks. And it needs it to make sure that we deliver those vaccines every bit as rapidly as we conceivably can. This cannot possibly be a moment for sitting still. It would be the highest irresponsibility if Washington was not able to find a compromise. That means cutting out peripheral issues that may be very important economic issues but are not central to the stimulus challenge. And it means getting with the program and recognizing that America needs help. I hope it will happen in the next several weeks. It looks more likely than it did, but there are no certainties. And it is a real test of goodwill and the capacity of Washington to function.
Larry, one of the things we like to do here on Wall Street is look at the week, but also look beyond the week to larger patterns here. And when anybody mentions a paradigm shift for me, it certainly gets my attention. I read that book a long time ago about paradigm shifts. And there's suggestion there may have been a paradigm shift when it comes to fiscal stimulus. It comes from Olivier Blanchard referring to you, saying that there might be a paradigm shift. The large agreement between Larry Summers, Jason Furman, Ben Bernanke, Ken Rogoff, and him. Tell us about that paradigm shift.
I think the paradigm shift is one I've talked about on your show before, David. For 40 years since the inflation of the 70s, the preoccupation of macroeconomic policy has been with monetary discipline to avoid inflation and fiscal discipline to prevent crowding out. Now, when we've got zero interest rates and zero interest rates projected for a very low interest rates projected for a very, very long time, we're in a different paradigm. We're in a paradigm where the challenge is absorbing all the savings that an unequal and uncertain private sector generates. And that means we're going to have to think about fiscal policy not just as a counter-cyclical tool, but as a chronic instrument that we're going to need to use to maintain demand. If we don't have fiscal policy, we are going to have pathologically low interest rates. We are going to have, with those pathologically interest rates, savers who don't have a chance to make it for their retirement, exploding asset prices and potential financial instability, rising inequality, and economies that aren't going to reach their full potential. So the right way is to provide more stimulus to the economy, and we probably can't provide it with monetary policy, and even if we could, the side effects would be catastrophic in terms of financial instability. So we need to think about fiscal policy as a permanent tool of maintaining demand management. That is a very different view than the one we've had. It may well not be the right view forever, but it's the right view for coming decades.
So apply that approach to fiscal policy, which would be a paradigm shift, as you say, to what we're facing right now, what Roger Altman earlier in this program referred to as a split-screen economy, where we're looking at 3-4 months of really tough times, perhaps with a snapback if a vaccine is widely distributed toward the middle to the end of next year. Can we have one fiscal policy that handles both of those very different conditions?
I think so, because even with the snapback, even with a very good period of growth, we're still going to be short in terms of total number of jobs of where we thought we were. We're going to be short in terms of output of where we thought. we would be, and we are going to need to run deficits of a kind larger than people used to think were appropriate. And the truth is, it's going to be okay, because we're going to be able to run those deficits given how much savings there is to absorb them, and given how little pressure there is coming from credit markets. So I don't think this is an alarming prospect. In many ways, low costs to borrow for public investment are a boon, are a good thing, just like businesses regard low borrowing costs as a good thing, and all of us as homeowners regard the ability to refinance our mortgages, the ability to get a larger home or a second home at a lower carrying cost because of low interest rates. We regard those as positive things, and the same thing is operative in terms of public investment. So I don't think of this as necessarily a bad thing. Low interest rates are an opportunity to do all kinds of things we probably should have done a long time ago, whether it's green investment or investing in our children or fixing our infrastructure. I've used this example before. When I started flying from Harvard to Washington to give advice, it took an hour and a quarter. Now it takes over an hour and a half, and it hasn't gotten any further, and airplane technology hasn't gotten worse. What's gotten worse is our air traffic control system's ability to manage all the traffic. That's got to not make any sense. That is one of many, many examples of where we need to strengthen our country's infrastructure. Another example is our kids who are not able to go to school, and in so many cases don't really have decent access to education because they lack the broadband access that is kind of part of being part of the economy, in the same way that electrification was a necessity to be part of the economy a century ago.
Okay, so Larry, just in a little over a minute left here, I want to do a couple of quick summer says that we'd love to do. Number one, when are we going to have a vaccine which is so widely distributed it affects 70% of the American population? When will that happen?
June 1st.
That's pretty bullish. But is that the second inoculation or just the first?
Second inoculations for enough of the population that COVID will be down 85% from current levels by June 1st, is my prediction. I mean, there are people who are saying we're going to get a third of the way by February. And if we come close to that, we'll get the rest of the way for sure by June.
Well, I, for one, would take that deal without a question.
I'm an optimist on this.
Well, I like your optimism. That's terrific, Larry. You've been warning us about COVID-19. It's good if there's a way out of this. Second one, when we're going to see the 10-year yield up about 1.5%, we really saw it move up significantly this week.
I think that's going to be until next year. I don't think the Fed's going to want to see that happen. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to keep rates low, to maintain financial stability, and make sure that we're getting all the stimulus to investment that we can. February 1st, 2022.
Oh, 2022. By next year, you mean 2022, not 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But does that mean the reflation trade may be oversold?
As a possibility, no. There's a lot more room above 1% than there is
That's fair
below
enough.
where we are now.
Fair enough.
But I don't think it's a good short-run trade.